All right, so thank you for tuning in to Chump at the Bit. I'm Kyle Edwards, of course. Now, once again, had another week where it was pretty busy, work and all that, so couldn't give you the same amount of episodes that I normally do, but slowly getting back there, so bear with me as I try to get back to a regular schedule with you guys. But anyway, whenever I can, I will give you an episode. So this episode, talk about the NBA playoffs. I've had a lot of fun watching them. Gonna go through, give you my thoughts on each series real quick. And for a few of the series, I might talk a little bit more about them because there have been some thoughts that I've been having watching certain players in these playoff series that I feel like I need to share with you. And, of course, at the end of the episode, let me know what you think about it. But hopefully you've been enjoying them as much as I have. And I guess we'll start. Let me start out west. Yeah, let's do that. So we got Phoenix, Pelicans, Suns, Pelicans. Suns just took the series lead, are up 2-1. We know that Devin Booker got hurt. He's out for games 3 and 4. So over the next game at least, as well as game 3 that just happened, it's going to be a lot for, I guess, the collective group. Because with Phoenix, yes, Booker, Paul are the stars, but you can't look past what Ayton does or Bridges or Payne off the bench and, guys like that. So I think they'll still have enough to, not really, I guess you could say, survive this series against the Pelicans, because for the 8th seed in the Pelicans, they played really well, and you got to give them a lot of credit. Ingram, McCollum, it seems like that duo could have some staying power in New Orleans, maybe. I don't know. Of course, there's always the looming Zion issue with them. What happens there, because I believe, well, I don't know. They have to address that somehow, because whether it's him getting into shape or whatever it's going to take for him to have a healthy season, they're going to have to figure that out, because if you can add him to Ingram and McCollum, hey, the Pelicans could have something going. But I don't know if, once Zion is up for a new contract or whatever, if the Pelicans could pay those 3. I don't know. Probably can't. But for right now, Ingram, McCollum works. And ultimately, they probably won't win the series, but I think it's been a good showing for them so far. Game 1, they were in that one for a lot of the game. They pulled the stunner in game 2 in Phoenix, winning that one. The game where Booker got hurt. And then, game 3, very close in the end. So subtracting Booker from the equation has brought the gap between the two teams much closer. And I mean, I would not be surprised if the Pelicans were able to win game 4, make it 2-2, and then you have a 3-game series, possibly with Booker coming back, and really giving Phoenix a run for their money in this first series. So, but yeah, we'll have to see if Booker comes back. They said he has a mild hamstring strain. Hamstrings are never something to take lightly, so hopefully something he can get past once he does get back. But yeah, gotta give a lot of credit to the Pelicans in the way that they're playing. Hopefully they can carry it over into next year and have a good season. Memphis, Minnesota. Memphis is up 2-1. This series, now if you remember before the series started, I said that I was taking the Grizzlies. I took them in 6. But the key for the Timberwolves would be kind of between the ears. If they were able to, handle the moment, the stage, the spotlight of the playoffs and play well, then they could make this series a really tight series. Because I do like what the Timberwolves are doing. Because I like Karl-Anthony Towns. I like Anthony Edwards. Patrick Beverley gives that team bravado, an edge, whatever you want to call it, swag, that apparently this team has, really grasped onto and love. So that's kind of explains the whole playing game where they won it, and they had the big celebration and all that. That was led by Patrick Beverley, his emotion and all that, and the team clearly caught on to it, which is a good thing. But I guess the adverse effect of that was, did they pour so much into that game, so much emotion and all that, that now that they're actually in the playoffs for the first time for Anthony Edwards, and I don't think Cat's been in the playoffs. Yeah, I don't think so. So now that they're in the playoffs, you can see it in their play. They at times can get maybe a little bit too far ahead of themselves, and then their play turns sloppy, which is what we kind of saw in that game 3, because the Timberwolves had the big lead and Memphis was able to slowly chip away at it, because the Timberwolves they, like I said, they got wrapped up in it. It was in front of their home crowd. So, of course, they wanted to perform the best that they could in front of the Minnesota crowd, and it slowly slipped away from them. And then once Memphis took the lead, you knew Minnesota was not going to come back from it, because, you could tell that mentally they weren't prepared for it. Now, the good thing about this series for Memphis, who's the favorite in this one, is that for all of the inexperience that Memphis has in this series, Minnesota has just as much of it. So Memphis did luck out that Minnesota was their first round opponent. If they had gone up against a more experienced team, maybe they would find themselves down 2-1 at this point, because Memphis hasn't played perfect, of course, because you can see some of the flaws in Memphis's game. It's just that Minnesota hasn't been opportunistic enough to take advantage of it, because Memphis can play with a lot of emotion like Minnesota does. And I think in this series, that's part of the reason why it's been enjoyable to watch, because they're both, young teams that can at times get cocky, which I don't have a problem with if it's useful. And for these two teams, I think, well, for Minnesota, of course, that kind of cocky behavior has been the catalyst to them having the great season that they had this year. And for Memphis, it's been kind of something that's been, it seems like it's been built when, Ja's been off the court. And I think a lot of people thought that they may have slipped once Ja was out. But the team played so well without him that they've gained a confidence level that's, way up there. So when they were down big to Minnesota, not like they packed it up and went home or anything like that. They understood that they had the talent to come back, and then that's what they did. Desmond Bane was great in Game 3. Dylan Brooks as well. So, interested to see what happens with this one. Game 4 is Saturday night. It's in Minnesota, so Minnesota's clearly going to have to get this one because they don't want to go down 3-1. They would love to go back to Memphis for Game 5, tied at 2, and then that way it's a 3-game series at that point, and Minnesota's going to really think they have a chance to steal this one, which I wouldn't say that they don't. If you look at the two teams, they're kind of similar in the way that they're built. Ja Morant, Anthony Edwards, Karl-Anthony Towns, Jaren Jackson Jr., Dylan Brooks. I'm going to say D'Angelo Russell, but that might be a little bit of a stretch comparing those two. But either way, they're built kind of on, a young wing with a big player. So two teams that for the fan bases should be excited for the next couple of years. And especially for Minnesota, that's good to hear because Minnesota's been kind of down since the KG Latrell Sprewell days. So it's good to see that they've finally built it back up to where they're seen as a good team in the West again. I guess just to add, I'm fully safe with my picks of Phoenix against New Orleans. I still think Phoenix will win that series, and then Memphis will still beat Minnesota, I believe. So I'm still comfortable in those two picks. Third series out west, the Warriors, Nuggets. Golden State's up 3-0. I thought this series might go 6. It looks like this one's going to be 5 tops. And what we're seeing here is, one, the fact that Steph Curry is the 6th man coming off the bench as he's now coming back from the foot injury or ankle injury. And Jordan Poole played so well that they've kind of just left him in the starting lineup. And it's made the Warriors a very dangerous team, because what team has a past MVP like Steph Curry coming off the bench? And it's not like he played 23 minutes last game, but he got 34 points, so he's still getting his points in less minutes, and he's able to be monitored minutes-wise, where Steve Kerr can kind of take advantage of player matchups to get him on the floor at the right time, so he can get his feet back underneath him, gets back into the rhythm and all that. So it's going to be fascinating to see how long this experiment continues of Curry coming off the bench. Is this going to be, I guess, as long as they're winning, keep the formula as is, and as long as Curry continues to produce at the level that he has so far, fine. And if that's the case, I mean, that makes the Warriors that much more more difficult to play against. Because even if they switch back, Poole was a great 6th man as well, but you kind of just ride with it right now as they have a 3-0 lead, going for the chance of the sweep on Sunday for Denver. First 2 games were kind of blowouts, to be honest with you. Game 3, they played really well back in their home arena in Denver. But what we're seeing here is that Jokic can only do so much for the team, because the missing, production of Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. are just so glaring in this series. Denver's getting, like I said, as much as they can out of Jokic. Aaron Gordon's been okay. Bones Highland's been good. But they just really need Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. That's just what it is right now. And I wonder if you had those 2 guys, would we see less of DeMarcus Cousins? Because against Golden State, Cousins coming in for Jokic, it doesn't really have the effect that I think Denver would think it would have. Because to me, you watch Cousins, he's a minus net rating guy as soon as he comes in. Against a Golden State team that doesn't really play a big man, I think it would have been better off for Denver to go small. But it's just that in terms of able bodies, I don't really know what that lineup would look like if Jokic goes off the floor. Would you play, I guess, one of the greens at the 5, which you can get away with at times? It's just that when Jokic is off the floor with no Murray and no Porter Jr., the offense can become ineffective. And, at this point in his career, Cousins is, I guess, he's only really employed by any team, Denver in this case, because of what he could potentially give you offensively, because he has developed a 3-point shot. Although if I was a team, I'd fully let him shoot them. He shoots them better, but he's still not some big threat out there that you were worried about him. But that's kind of all he gives you. Some nights he'll give you some low post play, but that's not consistent enough for me. And it just, I mean, Golden State coming at you with Curry, Thompson, Poole. It's just too much for Denver right now. Those are three guys that can kill you from the outside, can get to the rim at times, are constantly moving on the offensive end. It's too much. So, unfortunately, until the Nuggets get Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. back, I mean, it's not like the full complement of players. So I can't really be too surprised that it's 3-0. Like I said, I thought I was going to go 6 with Golden State still winning, but Golden State going for the sweep Sunday. Hopefully Denver can, put together at least one game, because you don't want to get swept as an NBA team. Let's be honest. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But I mean, Jokic is doing all he can, and that's all you can ask of him. Dallas, Utah. Dallas is up 2-1 in the series, and that's without Luka. And even with the word before the series that Luka was going to miss some games in the series, I still went with Dallas. I took Dallas in, I think, 7. I don't even know about that because, all right, let's be honest here. Utah is a mess right now. And not really surprising to me because, like I said, I didn't pick Utah in this series, even though Utah during the Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert era have had good regular seasons. It's just that I don't trust them in the playoffs. And this just looks like the way that this series is going. If Utah loses this one, this is going to be it for Gobert and Mitchell. One of them is going to go. I believe for Danny Ainge in the front office, there's going to depend upon Mitchell. If Mitchell wants to stay, Gobert's going to be gone quickly. If Mitchell's the one who's like, I want out, then Gobert will stay, of course. I could even argue that if Mitchell wanted to leave, I would send Gobert out the door too. Because here's the problem. As much as Gobert gives you defensively, I think in the ever-transitioning NBA where it's becoming more positionless, you're seeing teams just putting out their 5 most athletic players and just winging it almost. A guy like Gobert is becoming, I think, less and less useful. And that's only because Gobert doesn't really give you much offensively. I would hope that one of these years Gobert develops some sort of a post game where he can kind of justify being out there. But the way that this offense is going right now, Gobert is nothing more than a, pick, roll to the hoop, try to get a lob, or when a shot goes up and is missed, he grabs an offensive rebound and can put it back up. That's the only way he's going to score and help you. Some teams that works because we see like Robert Williams with Boston. That works there because you have multiple dynamic scorers in Tatum and Brown. You have Grant Williams shooting threes and all that kind of stuff. Guys you could depend on out there, where a guy like Robert Williams can just kind of free roam and do his thing. With Utah, their offense is rough to watch. One, and I've said this for a while now with Utah, the fact that Jordan Clarkson has like this unlimited green light baffles me. I don't know what the purpose for that is, because a lot of times Clarkson just forces up perimeter shots, which does them no good. And it's basically what you're seeing here, where a team in Dallas that doesn't have their best player can still go out there, feel very confident in beating Utah, because what are you worried about offensively? Well, I guess defensively for them going up against Utah when they have the ball. Donovan Mitchell's going to take a lot of contested perimeter shots. Gobert's nothing offensively. O'Neal's basically a spot-up three-point shooter, so as long as you stay near him, you can neutralize him. Clarkson, let him do his thing. He's going to shoot himself a poor percentage, and unless he has having one of those nights where he's on, which is few and far between, but things are going to have to change in Utah. And this is another thing I thought about when I was watching these games. Is it safe to say that Donovan Mitchell should be put into a category where maybe the hype behind him was a little bit much? Because I think people wanted to thrust Donovan Mitchell into this top tier level because of, I guess, the series against Denver. I think it was against Denver in the bubble where he's going like back and forth with Jamal Murray. When I watch Donovan Mitchell, I don't see a guy who, no, he's clearly the best player on Utah, but I don't think he's one of those who can be the best player on a championship team. For the same reasons I say about Trae Young. Sure, they're dynamic offensively, but they're not the most efficient offensive guys. Defensively, they're both below average at best. And since they're lead guards, that puts a lot of pressure on their teams defensively because they're the first guy on ball on defense. And if you're letting opposing point guards get past you, that puts a lot of pressure on defense rotating. And if you have good enough shooters on your team, you could find an open shot against Utah. That's what we're seeing. And let me see, how can I say this? So Mike Conley, I get why he's on Utah. I feel like he's there for veteran leadership and all that. But the fact that he doesn't run the offense for Utah, I think, is one of the major issues. Because if he's not going to run the offense, why is he on the court? Now, I don't know if this is something that Coach Snyder can't do. But I think for Utah to have success, they should run through Conley, have Mitchell play off the ball, which I think he can actually do, but for some reason, it seems like it just doesn't happen enough. Maybe that's something they try game 4, just to give a different aspect to it, but that'd be the first thing I would change, kind of in the middle of the playoff series. Now, you can't really go through like wide sweeping changes in the most part. But that's what I would like to see. Let Conley bring the ball up, run the offense, and let Mitchell run off screens, back cuts, that kind of stuff. See what that unlocks for the offense. Maybe you stumble upon something there. But I fully expect Dallas to pull this out. Now, with Luka still being hobbled a bit, and then Brunson going out of game 3 with an apparent injury, if those two are limited or don't play game 4, then I guess I'm going to put a lot more on Dinwiddie. But Dinwiddie played much of the third game without Brunson, and Doncic wasn't already there, and they still won that game. So Dallas is going to be confident in that. And like I said, what killed Utah in game 3? Dallas was finding wide open guys for threes in the corner, and Utah seemed like they could do nothing against it. I don't see why that wouldn't continue in game 4. So I'm fully confident in my picking Dallas in that one, even if Luka never comes back in this series. And for me, I think this is just the beginning of the end for this Utah group. And to be honest with you, it's probably something that's needed. So now let's go to the East real quick here. Start with the Heat, Hawks. That's your 1-8 matchup. Heat are up 2-1. Hawks won game 3 with a floater late from Trae Young to give them the win. So this series, I had Heat in 6. Still confident in that. What can I say about this series here? sure the Heat are the 1 seed. But like I said, as a Celtics fan watching the Heat play, they're not some overwhelming number 1 seed that I think teams like the Celtics or the Bucks should be afraid of. Because like I said, it seems like we're on a collision course for, well, I guess we can't say that yet, but if everything goes as it's been so far, you'd get Celtics Bucks in the second round. And I fully feel like the winner of that series, if they had to meet Miami in the Eastern Conference Finals, would feel really confident about going up against them. Not to say Miami doesn't have talent on the team. They do, because they have Tyler Hero. You have Butler. You know, the games when he's like fully engaged, okay. You have Duncan Robinson, who, I mean, if you completely forget about him, can kill you. Bam Adebayo. So they have pieces there. Against an Atlanta team, I mean, they should have an easy time dispatching them, because Hawks defensively aren't that good, and the Heat we know can play defense, so they should be able to, you know, keep Trae Young in check, not let him go off, because that's obviously the game plan against the Hawks. Don't let Trae Young go off. You know, force him to shoot tough shots, make him fall in love with the logo 3 and all that stuff that, you know, sure, it looks good on SportsCenter, but he still takes way too many of them and doesn't make enough of them for me. But it is what it is. And I don't expect this series to go past my prediction of 6. Would not be shocked if if the Heat won the next 2 games. Meaning the second one in Atlanta, so game 4 Sunday, and then closed it out back home in game 5. Would not be surprised if that happened at all. If the Hawks push this series to 7, I'd be surprised at that point. Of course, if the Hawks won it, I'd be surprised. So, nothing really much to say there. I mean, Adebayo did say that, I guess he felt disrespected not winning Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, it is what it is. There was, you know, a few good candidates this year. I mean, Marcus Smart did win it, but you had Bridges and Phoenix, who, you know, can make a very good argument for winning it. Did Gobert come third, I think? And, I mean, maybe that's where the disrespect comes in. Because I haven't been impressed with Gobert defensively from the games I saw of Utah. But, yeah, maybe that's what Adebayo's saying. Because I can't feel like he feels disrespected in not winning, even though Smart was deserving of it. And if Smart didn't win it, Bridges would have been deserving of it too. So, yeah, it is what it is there. So, yeah, fully expect Miami to close this out at some point, whether it's game 5 or 6. If the Hawks get it to a game 7, I mean, we'll come back and talk about it then. If that's the case, then Miami's going to be in serious trouble. Because that probably means Trae Young has had a couple of more really impactful games. And, yeah. What else? Well, I think I said, Kyle Lowry, you know, dealing with a hamstring injury now. So we'll see about him game 4. But if he plays or he doesn't, I would still take Miami in game 4. But that's something worth monitoring for game 4 at least. We'll skip Celtics Nets. We'll leave that for last because as a Celtics fan, I've got to end the episode on that one. So we'll go to the Bucks Bulls. Bucks are up 2-1. Kind of expected. I mean, I had the Bucks winning this one at 5. And I feel really confident about that. Especially after game 3 with the Bulls taking some of the momentum away by winning game 2. You figured that game 3 being in Chicago, the Bulls are going to probably play their best game of the series. And they came up with that dud, losing by 30 in front of their home fans. I feel like mentally they're probably broken at this point. And that was with the Bucks not having Middleton, who we found out has an MCL sprain and will be out for a little bit. Yeah. So, and against the Bulls team that is really reeling at this point, the loss of Middleton's not going to be as noticeable. You might see it in a couple of stretches in these games, but it doesn't change my outlook on the series. I fully expect Milwaukee to still win this because they still have Giannis. You still have Holiday. You have Portis, who he left game 2 with the eye injury, but he's back and offensively stretches the floor for them, which is big for them. Amongst other players that they have, Grayson Allen and all that. I do think the Middleton injury will play a big part come next series, whether it's against Boston or Brooklyn gets through there. That's where I think it becomes a thing, because if it's against Brooklyn, they're going to need the Middleton production offensively to try to keep up with Durant and Kyrie. And I guess whatever Simmons brings to that, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And if you're going against Boston, with the defense that Boston is playing right now against Brooklyn, you bring that against Milwaukee without Middleton being there to be an option to kick the ball out to. That could sway that series as well. So, like I said, not worried about it against Chicago. Like I said, Chicago, this is a good stepping stone for them, but maybe they're a year away. Maybe next year's the year for them where make a few changes to the roster here and there, and maybe they could come out with a hot start next year, ride it out, get a better seeding, and we'll see how it is. Because if you look at Chicago on paper, Zach LaVine, talented guy. DeMar DeRozan, talented. Although I wonder what he'll look like next year. Would he be in Chicago next year? I don't know. Vucevic, talented big man. Caruso, who fits in well with this Chicago team. I know Lonzo Ball's hurt, but kind of becoming a recurring theme. So, that feels like something that's going to be part of his career for as long as it goes. There's always some injury there. At least that's what the trend seems like right now. Hopefully he can figure that out. Because, with Lonzo when he was in LA, wasn't a good fit to begin with, because being taken as high as he was, I felt like the pressure there would have been too much in that city. I think in Chicago, perfect for him. Yes, Chicago, they love their Bulls basketball. I'm not going to deny that. But I think in Chicago, he can fit in much better. Like I said, LA seemed like he was one of the guys that the attention was on. Chicago, he can just fit into the pack because more people are going to be paying attention to DeRozan, LaVine, probably those two. Ball can slide in with that group of like Caruso, Markkanen, Javonte Green, Kobe White. That group, fine. So game 4 is going to be pivotal in this one. And it's going to be pivotal in this one because if Chicago goes down 3-1, you can forget game 5. They look like a team that they will shut it down. If game 4 isn't going their way, by halftime, they may shut it down. So, for Bulls fans, Game 4 is going to tell you a lot about this group. If they come out, play well, start off strong, let the optimism flow. If they come out flat and Milwaukee starts dominating early in Game 4, look out. It might get ugly. Let's see. Philadelphia, Toronto, like I said, probably the least entertaining series of the first round, to be honest with you. One, I'm not the biggest fan of some of the pieces in Toronto. I mean, I've talked about it on here before, but if you're new here, it's your first time listening to this, I'll explain real quickly. Nick Nurse annoys me. That's the coach of Toronto. He annoys me. I'm not even really sure why. Because yes, it's all the antics on the sideline, but there's a lot of coaches that do that. Doc Rivers does that. I had another couple in my mind, but we'll just leave it. Doc Rivers does it as well. But it's just something about seeing Nick Nurse on the sideline that it gets to me. I don't know what it is. I honestly don't know. But on the court, not the biggest Siakam fan. And this is something that I noticed when I was watching the games. For a team that puts the ball in Siakam's hand a lot, is it just me, or does it seem like Siakam has like the most basic dribble package of any like lead ball handler that you've seen in these playoffs? Now I get it, he's a bigger guy, so of course I'm not expecting him to be Allen Iverson or anything like that, or Chris Paul or Steph Curry, Kyrie Irving like that with the ball, but yeah, it's just awkward to watch. It seems like with each dribble, he's like a millisecond away from just losing the ball. And he's one of those who dribbles into a crowd and has to rely on pushing off of people to try to get by them. And if he gets away with it, fine. But that's something that Toronto's got to figure out, because I do not want to see Siakam leading the offense and initiating like that. It is rough to watch. Fred VanVleet, I like him. Scotty Barnes, something about him as well. I'm not fully falling into the hype that some people have fallen into with him, only because let me see where Scotty Barnes is in like 3 to 4 years. Yeah, he's had a good showing so far his rookie year, but I would not be shocked if 3 years down the line Scotty Barnes is just another guy in the league. Like, some people are trying to put him up there as like a next legit star in the league. I'm not there yet with him. Not at all. I mean, that's because I'm the type where I'm not like, some of these analysts and other people you may listen to, where they try to jump on the hype well before necessary, so that if it does play out, they can kind of try to make the claim that they were the first one on board. I'm more rely on the eye test than numbers. So for me, I need to see it first to acknowledge it. So it's kind of like he has to prove something to me first. Unless, of course, there are some people that you can see the potential there, fall in love with it, and feel comfortable in it. Scotty Barnes just isn't one of those to me. OG Anunoby, I like him. I like his game. Another guy kind of on the Scotty Barnes train, I guess. What's his name? Precious Chua something. I feel like there's a lot of hype behind him when I think the Heat took him, and now he's in Toronto. He seems like he hasn't really captured the hype that was behind him. On the court, he's just a guy to me. So that's another guy who I never fell, for the hype for. And as we're seeing, he's just a role player on a team here, where when Miami took him, people were making it seem like he was Bam Adebayo or something. And he's just not that. But yeah, say all that to say what makes this series not as exciting as the other ones is just that Embiid, as skilled as Embiid is against a team like Toronto, there's no resistance because Toronto has nobody that can match up to Embiid height-wise, size-wise, anything like that. So Embiid's kind of out there just playing with kids. And I think the only way Toronto can have a shot in this series would be to play faster. But in order to do that, they have to create turnovers. Now, what is an interesting variable into this matchup is the whole Embiid thumb injury. We'll have to see what that does to him. Does that make him stick around the perimeter more? And if that's the case, Toronto might be able to steal a couple of games here. Because I think it's on his shooting hand. And he said he'll play through it. But once again, like the Middleton injury, this Embiid thumb issue will play a bigger role come next series. And that's if Miami can close out Atlanta. Then we'll have to see what it looks like there. Because, of course, Philadelphia is still Embiid dominant with Harden, Tobias Harris, I guess playing second fiddle to him. And Harden and Harris, I don't have the most confidence in, especially against teams like a Miami, Boston, Milwaukee. Teams that can come at you with multiple threats and defensively can get after it. I don't think those two guys will be able to raise their game to a level where Philadelphia, can do what they've failed to do these past few years and make an Eastern Conference Finals to get to the finals. I don't see it happening with this group. Maxey, of course, talented guy, but against Toronto, yeah, they can all shine because Toronto is what they are. A roster filled with I feel like everybody on the roster except for Fred VanVleet is between like 6'5" and 6'8", which is an interesting way to play. But the Siakam leading the offense, those sets need to die right now. It is rough. If you don't believe me, watch Game 4. Was Saturday afternoon at 2. And just pay attention to Siakam when he has the ball. If you play 2K, his dribble package would be one of those when you first create a player and you get like generic 1, generic 2. That's Siakam. I'm not even trying to be disrespectful, but I think it was like game 2 or something. I saw him just bringing the ball up, and that's the first thing that popped in my head. Like, why is this guy starting the offense? But, anyway. All right, so now let's go ahead and get to this final series. Celtics Nets. Now, like I said, I was saving this one for last. As a Celtics fan, got a lot to say about this one. So, all right, let's go ahead and get to this. First thing, this Simmons sideshow story to this whole thing, it's a little much right now. Because somebody needs to explain to me. We haven't seen Simmons play since last Eastern Conference Finals where, he had that meltdown where he wouldn't shoot layups, blah, blah, blah. Doc Rivers questions whether the Philly can win with him, blah, blah, blah. It manifested to the point where it was like, Simmons wants out. Cool. Gets out. I assumed once he got traded, boom, we'd see him on the floor. Doesn't happen. He's weeks away when he gets traded. Fine. I thought maybe when Brooklyn first plays Philly, that's when he shows up. Shows the Philly fans, this is what you're missing. No, didn't happen. What did he do? He went out there for warm-ups, got booed, sat on the bench in street clothes. Fine. Then it was, maybe we'll get him ready for the playoffs. Okay, fine. The Nets are in the play-in. I thought that meant maybe we'd see Simmons in the play-in game. No, that didn't happen. Sure. Okay. The Nets make it out of the play-in. They're now the 7th seed. Okay, this is when we're going to see Simmons. It's the playoffs now. Kind of crazy that you're just going to integrate a guy who hasn't been there in a year now in the playoffs, where you probably should have used the last couple of games of the regular season to do it. But hey, I'm not running the Brooklyn franchise. I'm not Steve Nash, who's the coach. So we don't see him the first 2 games in Boston. Okay. So now I'm thinking, game 3, back in Brooklyn. Boom. Ben Simmons has to play now. He's going to be in front of his home fans. Less pressure, because we've seen Celtics fans. That's what I love about my Celtics people. When the Celtics are good and they're in the playoffs, TD Garden, Boston Garden, what was the other names for it? Fleet Center, whatever you wanted to call it. Those are the past names. It's TD Garden now. I know that, but that place is one of the best arenas in the NBA come playoff time when the Celtics are good. Even when they're not like a great team and they make the playoffs, it's still a really good arena. And what did we see the first 2 games? That arena was locked in, and that's why I said Boston playing Brooklyn in round 1. I was not afraid of the matchup like some people were, because I knew with Brooklyn being there, the crowd was going to be 100% invested. Could you imagine if the Celtics are playing the Raptors right now? The crowd would be loud, but it wouldn't be the same level for Brooklyn. There's few teams in the East that the Celtics crowd's going to get up for. Brooklyn, Philly, Milwaukee, and Miami. Those 4. Outside of that, the Knicks, probably 5 because of Boston, New York, that whole thing. And then 6 would probably be Atlanta. But you get Brooklyn, that's enemy number 1 because of good old Kyrie Irving. And what do we see the first 2 games? The crowd is in his head. The first game, the booing, the F Kyrie chants and all that, it got to him. That's what the whole middle finger behind his head, like he was some kind of middle schooler in class trying to be funny. It was the first time I'd seen it on the court. It was hilarious to me because at that moment I knew the crowd was in his head. And how did that affect the play? That offensive series before the Tatum game winner. If you watch that, that was clearly Kyrie trying to get open to the point where he wanted to knock down the shot to put the nail in the coffin. That way he probably had in his mind he was going to do something to the crowd. But what he ended up doing was like dribbling out like 20 of the 24 seconds on the shot clock. Gave Durant a terrible pass down at his feet, which then rushed Durant into an even worse shot. So Celtics go down, no timeout. So I loved that Ime did that. Whether they made it or missed it, loved it, because Ime's whole thing with this group has been trust. So what happened, kind of what Ime talked about when he was first introduced. Well, how about how the Celtics weren't, at the top of the league in assists, and he said he's going to change that. The teams that have high assist numbers, and what do they have? Trust in the other players on the court. And Ime slowly throughout the year got Tatum and Brown to buy in to trusting the players out in the court. Brad Stevens, got to give him credit as well, because he got rid of some of the guys that you couldn't trust out there, except for Josh Richardson. That's the one guy who left that Celtics fans will say it hurt to see him go, but he did it so you get Derek White, because who's Derek White? A guy that you pass the ball to, he makes a quick decision. If he has a shot, he's going to take it right away. If he doesn't, he's either going to move the ball or he'll dribble drive and try to make a play that way. And that's why Derek White was the guy that they targeted, because that's the type of players that Stevens and Udoka want to surround Tatum and Brown with. Because bringing guys like that just fuels, I guess, the message of ball movement, player movement in Tatum and Brown. And you've seen the two of them get so much better at it, to the point where Tatum has become a ridiculously good playmaker now, especially these first two games that we've seen against Brooklyn, where if his shot's not going, he doesn't just sit there and just keep firing them up. He tries to get Grant Williams going, Jaylen Brown going, or Horford, guys like that. Horford has been a major player in this series as well, because you could see kind of the minute management that went on during the regular season is paying off now. And you're not playing every other night, so Horford can go 30, 35, even 40 minutes every once in a while in games and be fine the next game because he's going to have a couple of days off. So the series is not over yet. It's 2-0 Celtics. I understand that. Game 3 will tell us a lot about it, which is Saturday night. If it's another close game and you see the Celtics pull it out, the series will be over probably in 4. If Brooklyn can get the win, depending on how the Celtics play, I'm still locked in with my Celtics in 6, and I'd be perfectly fine with it. If Brooklyn blows out the Celtics in Game 3, I wouldn't necessarily overreact to it, but it would get my attention, because that would just make Game 4 that much of a bigger deal. Because even if Brooklyn wins both games in Boston, I'm not going to overreact to it, because I want to see if that does happen. Is it just something where the Celtics played their game, played it well, and Durant and Kyrie just were hot and beat them that way? I can live with that. But if it's something where all of a sudden that defensive pressure is shut off, I'd have a problem. If Kyrie and Durant start getting a lot of ticky-tack fouls in Brooklyn, I'd have a problem with that. So, and that's a major part of this. The way the Celtics play defense is tailor-made for playoff basketball, where physicality becomes more of an issue. Well, not more of an issue, but more of a focus, because refs let a lot more go in the playoffs, which is why I've said all the time for years, the way that the game is officiated in the playoffs, just let that be the norm. It would actually make the games more enjoyable. Well, not that they're not enjoyable now, but then make them more entertaining. Because the last thing that I want to see, at least speaking for myself, I'm hopefully you agree with me, is seeing guys, throw their body into defenders, getting weak foul calls. It just takes something away from it. And because we've seen Durant has struggled, but we haven't really seen Durant whine about foul calls, because Durant understands this is the playoffs. It's a make or miss league. Durant still gets his shot off, so it's whether he makes them or not that drives the narrative after each game. So now what we're seeing is a lot of people talking about Durant struggles. Well, part of that is Boston is built differently than a lot of teams in the East or in the NBA when going up against Brooklyn. The Celtics can throw Tatum at Durant, where Tatum is maybe not as tall. Durant is taller. I'm not sure what the size difference is, but Tatum has really long arms. So he is able to, since he's already a taller player, he's able to contest Durant's shots in a way that a lot of teams don't have a guy who can do that. Plus, the fact that Tatum is the focal point offensively and has taken on the challenge of playing Durant on defense, not a lot of teams have guys who do that. So I think that's where the difference is in this series. With Kyrie, yes, Kyrie is talented offensively. But what are we seeing? The Celtics are attacking Kyrie defensively. And for some reason, a lot of teams wouldn't do that. I don't know why, but because we all know Kyrie, not a defender. He can play defense for little spurts here and there. And even with that, what I'm saying is he'll stay in front of a guy. He'll get the occasional steal or something like that. But, yeah, he's not a good defender. And the Celtics are going right at him, whether it's Tatum, Smart, Brown. They have no problem driving the ball on Kyrie. And that puts a lot of pressure on Brooklyn's below-average defense already, where Claxton is such a big part. Well, Claxton and Drummond have to be rim defenders. Drummond isn't really one. Drummond can rebound for you, but last game I think he had like 4 rebounds, so that's pretty much useless from him. Claxton is more of a rim defender because he's more athletic than Drummond. He can jump higher, so he'll get you a couple of blocks here and there. But the main thing is, well, one, Ime is winning the coaching battle over Steve Nash. I think Steve Nash is in a rough situation right now because even when he got hired, we had heard in the offseason where Kyrie was talking about how they don't need a coach because they're kind of coaches on the floor. That puts Steve Nash in a rough situation because you just wonder, is it something where Steve Nash draws up a play and they just don't run it because the Nets offense for the most part is just Kyrie or Durant dribbling around trying to get an open shot. Defense, I'm not surprised because Steve Nash wasn't a defender and Steve Nash played for Mike D'Antoni, who could care less about defensive scheme. So I wasn't really worried about that with Brooklyn. But I think for most people, they thought Brooklyn would have enough firepower offensively to offset what they lacked defensively, while, I guess, undermining the Celtics' offensive ability, because I think people still see the Celtics' offense as that offense where Tatum and Brown take turns isolating the ball and trying to score. That's been the biggest change in all of this. Yes, they'll do it from time to time. Like if Brown or Tatum are on a heater, sure, they'll play a little bit more ISO ball. But it's more like 80-20% on that. I feel like most of their game is ball movement and finding open shots, whether they make them or not. They do it the next trip down, and they keep going with it. I think part of that is where Horford and Smart come in, because this version of Marcus Smart is the best version that we've seen, because this is just playmaker Marcus Smart, and I've said that that's the best version of Marcus Smart. I've said that before. Because yes, there are some nights where his streaky three-point shooting are an absolute plus, because if Smart gets going from three, he can hit tough three after tough three and really break the back of the other team's momentum. And that's what I love about him, because he'll take those shots when he feels it, and you know, he won't let a few misses deter him from taking a shot. I love that. But when he's just getting downhill, you know, throwing lobs to Rob when he's in the game, or Tice or Horford, or he's kicking into the corner for Williams or White, out in the wing to Pritchard, finding a cutting Jaylen Brown, throwing it to Tatum over the top. That's where Marcus Smart makes the Celtics offense that much more dangerous, and that's what I love to see, and we've seen it the first 2 games. So now we'll have to see if that translates into the games in Brooklyn. I'm not really worried about the Brooklyn crowd, because I feel like there's going to be a lot of Celtics fans down in Brooklyn, and I think it's going to help the team. But we'll just have to see what Durant and Kyrie look like playing on their home floor. I'm still confident in my Celtics in 6th pick, so we'll just have to see what happens on Saturday night. But yes, that's my breakdown of all these playoff series. And like I said, let me know what you think. So one last note. It looks like Rob Williams will be back either game 3 or game 4. there's a good chance he could play game 3. I've seen some people talk about that's like a panic move from the Celtics. I think it's a stupid idea there, because if Rob Williams is ready to go, it would be about 4 weeks since the surgery, and we were told 4 to 6 weeks. If Rob Williams is just anxious to get out there, I'd rather see him play. Let's say the series goes 5. Him get warmed up for the next 3 games against Brooklyn. That way he's ready to go game 1 against most likely Milwaukee in the second round. I don't want it to be something where he's held out this whole series and now you're putting him back out there against Milwaukee to try to get his legs back underneath him. Sure, he could probably do it, but I don't think that'd be, fair ask of him against a better team in Milwaukee. So, then the one last note, how does that look for Ben Simmons if a guy in Rob Williams who had surgery fights his way to come back in the earliest timetable possible of 4 weeks? And if Simmons is able to go in game 4, why can't he then go in game 3? It's a weird, I don't know. The whole Simmons thing is just too weird for me. But I'll probably, come back again after game 4. Talk more about these playoff series. I'm not going to do it after each one. The series are in different points in the games now. Some series have already played game 4. Or at least after Saturday would have played game 4. Brooklyn and Boston would have only played game 3. But definitely check in every couple of days on these series. So yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know what's been your most exciting series so far. For me, it's been Boston, Brooklyn, and Phoenix and the Pelicans have been exciting to watch as well. Memphis and Minnesota at stretches. But let me know if you've been enjoying the playoffs like I have. And like I said, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the like button. Hit subscribe, follow, share it with a friend, family member, let them know. As I try to establish a community here, would definitely appreciate that. You can go over to Twitter, follow me at Chompin' Podcast. Can talk sports definitely over there. That's what I use Twitter for mostly, and we can have some interaction. So, thanks again for tuning in. Like I said, hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, between now and the next episode, go back and check out a few of the other ones I've done so far. And yeah, so as I always say, be safe out there. God bless, of course, and enjoy your day, evening, night. Just enjoy it all. All right, I'm out. Have a good one.